She had been offered smaller in every room she had ever entered, a smaller dress, a smaller opinion, a smaller life, and she had smiled through every one of them. She was done smiling. The lobby of the Grand Joseon Hotel at 2 a.m. is a specific kind of quiet, the quiet of money that never fully sleeps, of marble floors that have absorbed too many secrets to echo anymore. Security cameras blink in their corners like lidded eyes. The night staff move with the particular weightlessness of people who have learned to disappear on command. Zara Ademi walks through the center of it like she owns the floor. She doesn't own anything tonight. Her passport is in her father's assistant's briefcase. Her phone calls are being routed through a family account she no longer controls. Her engagement announcement, her name, her photograph, her future, formatted and ready, sits in the drafts folder of a publicist she has never met, waiting for one signature she has not given. She is 26 years old, and she is, in every practical sense, property being transported. She is wearing a red dress and Lagos perfume and a scarf of black Ankara silk tied around her left wrist, and she is moving toward the revolving door with the focused calm of a woman who has already decided something no one else in this building knows yet. Going somewhere. She stops, not from fear, from the quality of the voice, low, unhurried, the way someone speaks when they already know they don't need to raise it. She turns. He is leaning against the far column the way men lean when they have been trained to make stillness look effortless. Dark clothes. Dark eyes doing inventory of her face. He is Korean, somewhere in his 30s, with the kind of jaw that only comes from a life of holding things in, and he is looking at her the way you look at something you weren't expecting but recognize immediately. Kang Ji-hoon. She'd read the name in the contract writer, head of Kang's security intelligence, the invisible hand, hired to ensure the Ademi daughter arrived at her engagement dinner without incident. She hadn't been told he was going to look like that. She filed that detail away and kept her face empty. "I'm getting air," she said. "At 2 a.m. I'm Nigerian-British. We invented late nights." He didn't smile. He didn't move. He said, "The attorney's office on Myeongdong-gil closes at midnight." The air between them shifted. She held his gaze for 2 full seconds, 3 long enough to make a point. Then she walked directly to him, stopped 2 feet away, and placed one hand flat against his chest. Not aggressive. Precise. She could feel his heartbeat through the fabric. Slower than hers. That told her something. "I know what you were hired to do," she said quietly. "Do it, and I will tell my father's lawyers that Kang Security had prior knowledge of the covenant's contested terms." She had no such evidence. She said it anyway. "Move, or make the most expensive phone call of your career." He looked at her hand on his chest. He looked at her face. Something moved behind his eyes, not fear, something older than fear. He stepped aside. She walked through. She heard his footsteps behind her before she reached the door. "You're following me," she said, not turning. "I'm taking the air," he said. "I'm Korean. We invented cold nights." She almost smiled. She didn't let him see it. "Welcome to the Velvet Empire, where love costs more than most people have, and the price is always collected at the worst possible moment. If you're finding us for the first time tonight, stay. This one is going to ask something of you." The attorney was not there. Zara stood in the doorway of a shuttered office front on Myeongdong-gil and looked at the dark glass and said nothing for a long moment. Ji-hoon stood 3 steps behind her with his hands in his pockets, looking at the street, giving her the courtesy of not watching her absorb the failure. She had paid for that contact through 3 layers of private arrangement. Someone had gotten there first. She didn't move. She was doing the calculation behind her eyes, which route was still open, which leverage was still intact, how many days before the announcement draft went live. 3 days. She turned and walked back past him toward the hotel. He fell into step beside her without comment. They walked half a block in silence before she said, "How long have you been watching me?" 3 days. She nodded slowly, like this confirmed something. "Did my father pay you extra to watch my calls?" "I don't take extra payments for things that should be included in the contract." She glanced at him sideways. That's an interesting moral line for a man in your business. I have several. They kept walking. The silence was not comfortable, and it was not uncomfortable. It was the specific silence of two people trying to read each other without looking like they're trying. She said, "The woman who arranged that meeting, did your team pressure her?" "No." "Then someone else got there first." "Yes." She stopped walking. He stopped. She turned to look at him directly, and he let her, didn't look away, didn't reposition, just received it. "Who?" "I don't know yet." He said it like it bothered him, like it was a problem he was already solving. She watched him for a moment longer than was comfortable, and he still didn't look away. She turned and kept walking. He followed. Something shifted in her chest that she immediately pressed back down. The mandatory dinner was held in a private room on the 42nd floor. 12 people, round table, the kind of silence between courses that has weight. Zara sat across from her two Ademi uncles, the eldest, Rodemi, with the careful smile of a man who had never once said what he was actually thinking. The second, Emeka, who had, and who was worse for it. Park Seojeon, her intended, sat at the table's head with the pleasant expression of someone who had already won. Jihoon sat in the perimeter. His job tonight was presence, not participation. He didn't eat, he watched. The conversation moved between English and Yoruba and Korean, fluid and deliberate, topics selected like surgical instruments. Zara spoke when spoken to. She answered beautifully. She gave them exactly enough to satisfy and not one syllable more. She was performing. Jihoon could see it. The way her hands stayed still in her lap. The half-second delay before each smile, genuine enough to pass, calibrated enough to cost her nothing. He found himself watching her hands, the scarf around her wrist, the way her left thumb pressed into the fabric without her seeming to know she was doing it. Then Uncle Rodemi made a remark in Yoruba, low voice, the kind of thing you say to the table and not to a person. A few of the Ademi contingent laughed softly. Zara went very still. Not obviously, not enough for anyone else to catch, but Jihoon had been trained to read stillness. He watched her translate the laughter in real time and stay completely, carefully, beautifully empty behind the eyes. The dinner concluded. Handshakes, small courtesies. Zara moved with grace through all of it. Jihoon was in the corridor outside the elevator when she emerged. She walked past him without stopping. He followed. They were alone in the hallway before he said, "What did he say?" She stopped, didn't turn immediately. "Yoruba," she said. "You don't speak it." "No, but I read rooms." She turned then, looked at him. He could see she was deciding something. He said, she stopped, started again. The direct translation is, "She has been a beautiful inconvenience since the day she was born, and we are grateful Seoul will finally make something useful of her." She said it without inflection, like reading a weather report. The hallway was quiet. Jihoon looked at her face for a moment. Then he said, "My brother was told he was born into the wrong family." A pause. He believed them. He walked away before she could respond. He heard nothing behind him. No footsteps, no sound. He did not look back. He did not need to. He could feel her standing there in the hallway, holding that exchange like a thing that had changed shape in her hands. He took the stairs. I can't ask you what she felt standing in that corridor, but I know something broke open in her that she hadn't expected. And I know she didn't cry. Not yet. She would make them earn the tears. She knocked on his door at midnight. He opened it immediately, which meant he hadn't slept, which she noted without comment. She had a folder in her hand. "I need to show you something," she said. He stepped back. She came in. She put the folder on the desk, opened it, and stepped back so he could read. He read. The silence in the room became a different kind of silence. It was a sealed financial record, archived, mislabeled, buried inside 12 layers of the Ademi family's Korean business documentation that she had spent 2 days moving through, looking for the contract's legal soft tissue. What she had found instead was something else. A record of information exchange. A record of which firm had supplied which intelligence to Chief Ademi in the fall of 12 years ago. The name in the supplier column was Kang Security Intelligence, a predecessor firm, before Ji-hoon had taken the chair from his father. And the intelligence supplied had been used to construct a financial crimes case against a Kang Do-yeon. His brother's name, in his father's records, connected to the man who had sent Zara to Seoul. Ji-hoon stood very still. He read it twice. The third time he stopped reading and stood with his eyes on the page without seeing it. She did not speak. She let the room hold it. Finally, quietly, "How long have you had this?" "Long enough," she said. He looked at her. "Long enough to have weaponized it," she said. "I didn't." The room held that for a moment. He looked back at the folder, then at her, then at something beyond her that she couldn't name. "Why not?" "Because I know what it feels like to have someone pick up your wound and point it at you." She said it simply, without drama. "I decided I wouldn't be another person who does that to you." He was very quiet for a very long time. She stood there and let him be quiet. Outside the window, Seoul was still and lit and enormous. Finally he said, "The engagement." "Yes. You need it dissolved." "I need evidence of duress in the original signing. I need the documentation chain broken. I know what you need." He looked at the folder again. "And now I know why your contact didn't show up tonight." The weight of that landed between them. He had found the answer to the question she'd asked on the street. The system was already moving to close the exits. She watched his face. He was not a man who showed things easily, but she had been studying his stillness for 3 days now, and she could read it. He was deciding. She felt, in that moment, something she had no prepared language for, not hope exactly. Something more dangerous than hope, the specific feeling of believing someone. She had not believed someone in a very long time. Let me rest here for a moment, with her, in that room, at that hour, having just handed a man the truth she could have used as a weapon and chose instead to offer as a gift. Because some of us know what it costs to do that. To hold someone else's wound carefully when the world taught you to protect yourself first. To bet on a person's decency when decency has not always bet on you. May you be seen by the ones who deserve to see you. May whatever you are carrying tonight be met with the gentleness it deserves. May you find steady ground even when the people who should have built it for you never did. If these words land, say amen in the comments and stay with us. This story isn't finished yet. He did not sleep that night. She didn't either. They did not speak of this, but they both knew. Morning arrived the way mornings arrive in luxury hotels. Coffee appeared, light shifted. The city outside resumed its indifferent business. Ji-hoon had spent 6 hours building a controlled detonation in his mind. The evidence Zara had found was not enough on its own. It was old, it was buried, and the Adami legal structure was designed to absorb exactly this kind of pressure without flinching. But it was enough to show the Park family that the man they were partnering with had once used a Korean security firm to frame a Korean citizen. That was not a business detail. That was a matter of face. If the Park saw the file, they might withdraw. If they withdrew, the engagement dissolved from the outside, and Zara's family could not blame her. He started making calls at 6 in the morning. By 9, he had a meeting arranged with a Park family liaison, not an official channel, a back channel, a man who traded in the kind of information that never appeared in formal records. He did not tell Zara. She found out at 11. She appeared in the doorway of the hotel business center where he was finishing the call, and he could tell from the way she was standing, weight forward, perfectly still, eyes reading the room, that she had been there long enough to understand the shape of the conversation even without the words. He ended the call. She came in. She closed the door. "You went around me," she said. "I went ahead of you." "Same thing." "No, going around you would have excluded you from the outcome. Going ahead of you is trying to clear a path before you walk into it." She looked at him for a long moment. "And if I'd wanted to be consulted on the path, I would have spent the night explaining it instead of building it." She sat down, not from defeat, from choosing a different position. "Will it work?" she asked. I don't know yet. Best case. The Parks receive the file, recognize that Adami's credibility is compromised, and quietly request a dissolution of the engagement based on misrepresentation. Your name stays clean. Your mother stays untouched. She was quiet, and your contract. He looked at the window, voided. And your family's guarantee on the engagement. Also voided. She was very still. Jihoon. He looked at her when she used his name. She had not used it before. Neither of them acknowledged this. That is everything, she said. That is your family's standing in Seoul. Yes. You would do that. He held her gaze. I already did it. The room between them contracted. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't fully name, not gratitude, something past gratitude, something that had no clean translation in either of their languages. The sound of a phone, not his, not hers, a vibration from the front desk down the hall. He watched her make the choice he could see her making, to let this moment be what it was instead of immediately converting it into strategy. She let it. Thank you, she said, just that. He nodded once. He did not say you're welcome because he couldn't say it honestly yet. He didn't know if it had worked. He didn't know what it would cost. He only knew he had made the choice and it was already irreversible. He had crossed his own moral line 3 hours ago. He had been hired to deliver her to the engagement. He had just tried to dismantle it. He would not decide how to feel about that until he knew she was safe. The message arrived at 2 in the afternoon. Jihoon's phone, the Park family liaison, 1 sentence. Park Seojun announces the formal engagement ceremony. 3 days, guests already summoned. The announcement goes public tonight. He read it twice. Then he understood. The Parks had received the file and made the opposite calculation. If they withdrew now, they looked weak. If they accelerated, they locked the deal before the damage could spread. They were burying the information by making the ceremony too public, too fast, too witnessed to be quietly dissolved. His phone rang. An unknown number, he answered. His father's voice. He had not heard it in 4 years. It was exactly the same. Whatever you are doing, his father said. Stop. Father. The Kang name is in the ceremony documents as guarantor. Do you understand what that means? If you move against this now, every contract we hold in Seoul collapses within 60 days. Everyone. I am 70 years old and I have built this house with 30 years of my hands, and if you. They framed Do-yeon, Jihoon said. Adami used us to do it. You didn't know, I understand that, but now we know. The silence on the line was the silence of a man absorbing something too large for the call. Jihoon. His father's voice had changed, just slightly, something underneath the hardness. I have to go, Jihoon said. He hung up. He sat with the phone in his hand for exactly 30 seconds. Then he called Zara. She answered on the second ring. We have 3 days, he said. I need you to trust me. There was a silence, long enough that he could hear her deciding. I already do, she said. That's what makes this terrifying. He almost said something then, something that would have cost him a great deal to say. He pressed it back. Meet me in an hour, he said. We have work to do. They spent the next 36 hours building. She had things he didn't. The internal family documentation. The original contract in its unredacted form. The names of 3 other Adami family members who had expressed private reservations about the engagement and could, with the right approach, be converted from observers to witnesses. He had things she didn't. The network, the channels, the ability to move information through Seoul's private architecture in ways that never left footprints. Together, they built a case for the engagement's dissolution that was airtight, untraceable back to either of them, and positioned in a way that allowed every family involved to save face. It was not justice. It was not the reckoning either of them secretly wanted, but it was the only structure that would hold. They worked mostly in silence. Room service went cold. Neither of them noticed. At some point past midnight on the second night, she was at the desk, and he was on the floor with documents spread around him, and she looked down at him and said, You're going to lose everything, aren't you? Even if this works. He looked up. Define everything. She gestured at the documents. The contract, the family's standing, your father's trust. You had a plan for your life before I walked into this hotel. This isn't it. He held her gaze. No, he said, it's not. She looked at him for a long moment. I'm sorry. Don't be, he said it without performance. I made the choice. She turned back to the desk. He could see her jaw working. He turned back to the documents. Neither of them said what was in the room. A knock at the door. Small, uncertain. Jihoon opened it. Sade stood in the hallway in her pajamas and 2 puffs with red ribbons and an expression that was too old for her face. She was 12. She looked like she had been carrying something for a while. May I come in? She said, like she'd practiced it. Jihoon looked at her. He stepped back. She came in. She saw Zara at the desk. She didn't run to her. She walked up to Jihoon instead and said, with the directness of someone who has decided not to be afraid, I heard them talking in the hallway this evening. Uncle Rodemi and one of the other men, in Yoruba. Jihoon waited. They said they should lock Zara's phone access until after the ceremony so she cannot call anyone else. She said it with the careful enunciation of someone reporting, not editorializing. And then one of them said, if the girl gives problems, the younger one is already prettier and more manageable anyway. The room went absolutely still. Zara had turned in her chair. Her face was controlled, barely. Sade looked at Jihoon. I think they meant me. She said it matter-of-factly, the way a 12-year-old tells you a fact when they haven't yet learned to soften facts. I'm the younger one. Jihoon looked at her for a long moment. This small person in pajamas with her ribbons standing absolutely straight, telling him the truth without flinching. He crouched down, so he was at her eye level. Sade, he said, I want you to go back to your room, lock the door, and not open it for anyone except your sister. Can you do that? She studied him, then she nodded. Good, he held her gaze. I promise you will go home. She looked at him for another moment, deciding if she believed it. Then she said, I know, I came to tell you because I knew you'd fix it. She walked to Zara, pressed her face against her sister's shoulder for exactly 3 seconds, then walked back to the door with her small shoulders straight and let herself out. The door clicked shut. Jihoon stood. Zara was looking at him. He was looking at the closed door. There was a single unguarded moment on his face, the kind of expression that only arrives when something a person has locked away decides to surface without permission. He straightened. He crossed to the documents. He picked up his phone. I'm going to see your father tonight, he said. Alone. She stood up. Jihoon. Not as his contractor, not as Kang's security. He looked at her. As myself. She was still. You can't stop me from doing this, he said. It was not a challenge. It was him being honest with her, maybe for the first time without the shape of strategy around it. She looked at him for a long time. He let her look. He was done managing what she saw. Come back, she said. He held that, let it matter. Yes, he said. Chief Emeka Ademi's suite was what it always was, a room assembled to communicate dominance through restraint. Orchids. A view. The kind of whiskey that costs more than most people's rent. The chief answered the door himself. He was expecting room service. He found Jihoon. He tried to close the door. Jihoon put his hand on the frame. I would like 5 minutes, he said. After that, whatever you decide is yours to live with. They looked at each other. The chief stepped back. Jihoon came in. He placed the folder on the table. He did not sit. He did not threaten. He simply said, I know what was done to Do-yeon Kang. I know which information you purchased and from whom and how it was used. This is the documentation. He gestured at the folder. You have a choice tonight. The engagement proceeds tomorrow, and this material goes to every press contact I have in Seoul, Lagos, and London simultaneously. Or you call the Parks tonight, tell them the engagement contract contained a misrepresentation in the original signing, which it did, because your daughter's consent was never freely given, and you dissolve it with your family's honor intact and theirs. A pause. You lose nothing except a business deal. She loses nothing except a life she didn't choose. The chief looked at the folder. He did not open it. And you, he said, what do you lose? Ji-hoon looked at him. Everything I was trying to protect when I walked into this hotel. The room was quiet. My daughter, the chief said finally. Not as a statement, not quite as a question. Something in between, like a man recognizing for the first time that the word has a person inside it. Ji-hoon said nothing. He had nothing more to add. He let the silence do the work. He let the chief be alone in the room with what he was. With the folder on the table, and the orchids, and the view of Seoul burning with its 30 million lights, and the knowledge of what his daughter had been standing in for years, and the specific question of whether he had ever once asked himself what it had cost her. The chief picked up his phone. He called Park Seo-jun's father. Ji-hoon walked to the window and looked at the city and thought of nothing. He had no more room for thinking. He had done what he could do. The rest was not his. He thought, briefly and against his will, of a red dress, of Lagos perfume in a Seoul lobby, of a hand placed flat against his chest like a question. He let himself think of it for exactly 30 seconds. Then he turned around and waited to hear how it ended. It ended quietly, the way truly irreversible things often do, not with fire, but with a phone call and then another phone call, and then a document signed at 4 a.m. by men who had decided that their dignity was worth more than the deal. The engagement was dissolved. The stated reason was a contractual irregularity in the original terms. No blame assigned. No names named. Both families informed their respective networks, and within 24 hours the information had moved through the private channels of 2 continents, and by the time it was morning in Lagos, Zara Adami's engagement to Park Seo-jun was simply a thing that had briefly existed and did not anymore. Zara's mother called her. The call lasted 47 minutes. Said sat on the bed next to Zara and held her hand and did not speak. She did not need to. Ji-hoon went back to his room and sat in the dark for a while. His phone had 7 missed calls from his father. He had 2 contract cancellation notices from affiliated firms that had already heard. The Kang name as guarantor of the dissolved engagement was now a matter of public record. The kind of record that moved through Seoul's business community before the ink was dry. The kind that would require years to recover from, if it could be recovered from at all. He sat with this. He thought about Do-yeon, the settlement that would come quiet, private, sealed. His brother would never know the full shape of what had been done to him or what had been done to undo it. The truth was not available in this story, only the outcome. He did not know if that was enough. He did not know a lot of things. He knew one thing. He got up, he went to the room. She opened the door before he knocked. She'd been awake, he could see it. They looked at each other. She said, "Is it done?" "Yes." She exhaled, not dramatically, just a long, slow release of something she'd been holding for months, maybe longer. Her eyes were bright and her jaw was working, and she was not going to cry in front of him and he was not going to make her. He said, "You should sleep." She said, "I know." Neither of them moved. He said, "Zara." She looked at him, he looked at her. The door was open between them, literally, figuratively, in every possible sense. There was a moment. In the moment, everything that had not been said across 7 days in this city. The lobby at 2 a.m, the hallway after the dinner, a folder on a desk, a 12-year-old standing straight in her pajamas, a phone call at 4 a.m. that cost something real. He looked at her face. He memorized it the way you memorize something you are already preparing to miss. He said, "Go home, Zara." She said, "Come visit." He almost smiled. She caught it this time. She pressed her hand once against his chest. The same gesture as the first night, the same place, 3 full seconds, and then she stepped back and closed the door. He stood in the hallway for a while. Then he walked to the elevator and pressed the button and waited in the specific silence of a man who had done the right thing, and was only now beginning to understand what it would cost him to live with it. 3 weeks later. Lagos. She was at the gate when her phone buzzed. A photograph. No message. A street in Seoul, the specific stretch of Yuljiro where they'd gone at 3 in the morning when neither of them could sleep. The noodle shop with the handwritten menu and the owner who'd looked at them with zero curiosity. The yellow awning. The wet street. No text, just the image. She sat with the phone in her hand for a long time. Around her, the airport moved, families, gates, the particular noise of a city exhaling its people outward into the world. The wrist with the scarf. She'd left it in Seoul. She didn't know yet if that was an accident. She looked at the photograph. She did not book a return ticket. She did not delete the message. She put the phone in her pocket and walked through the gate and went home. There's a question I've been sitting with since I started telling you this story. A man who was hired to hold a door shut used every tool he had to open it instead, and it cost him his father's trust, his family's standing, and the revenge he had been quietly building for 12 years. He did not get justice for his brother. He got something quieter and smaller and harder to hold. He got a single photograph sent to a woman at an airport, and he got the 3 seconds of her hand against his chest, and he got the knowledge that he had chosen her freedom over his own reckoning. The question is this. When someone dismantles a cage to free the person they love, but uses the same kind of power that built the cage in the first place, and walks away with nothing, but knowing they did right, is that enough? Or is enough something we invented so we can forgive the people who deserve to win and didn't? Leave your answer in the comments. There's no clean one, and I don't trust anyone who has one. If this story sat with you, like it, subscribe, and tell someone about us. We make this for people who want stories that ask something real. You found us. Stay. The Velvet Empire thanks you for being here.